Hello and welcome to the Friday Football Show. I'm Alan Saunders. This is not the Beaver County Auto Studios where I usually film my show every Friday during football season, but it's a bye week. Pitt's off this week. Steelers are off this week. Don't have all that much to talk about, so I'm just out here cutting the grass, doing my thing. So I figured we'd just take it right out here on the front porch and do the show. And, maybe a little bit more relaxed setting for the bye week than the usual stuffy studio. And so we'll do our usual thing. We'll talk a little bit about the Steelers, talk a little bit about Pitt. We'll talk a little bit about WPIAL football. But, just kind of taking it casual Friday style here as we head into the off week. First thing I want to talk about is just, WPIAL football in general. Talked about some big picture stuff on the site. Of course, you can find my work at Pittsburgh Sports Now. Talked about some big picture WPIAL stuff on the site this week about the move to 6 classifications, whether or not that was a good idea, how it's played out, some of the unintended consequences of that decision. And, one of the things I brought up was something I've brought up on this show before, is that I think there needs to be a change in the way that they organize the class structure of high school sports and football in particular. I think the way hockey does it works better. And got a great conversation going on Twitter, got a great back and forth. I'd like to hear more of what you guys have to say about what you think would help the product from a standpoint of recruiting athletes, from a standpoint of creating more competitive games. I had a Twitter follower tell me that there were 5 games last Friday in all of Western Pennsylvania that were a touchdown or less, and that every other game was 2 score game. And that's not the way it should be. That the whole point of going to 6 classifications was to make more competitive environments. And of course, I talked about in my piece, Albert Gallatin deciding to leave the WPIAL there in the middle of a winless season because they feel like they can't compete. And those are the things that going to 6 classifications were supposed to fix. Clearly hasn't worked. And I'm not seeing the kind of things that I wish I was seeing from leadership when it comes to making changes there. I don't see anybody getting out in front of this news saying teams like Albert Gallatin should not be leaving this league. This is a problem. We need to find the solution and do something about it. I'm not seeing people from the league saying there's not enough parity, and then there's still too many teams are uncompetitive in their class and in their section, and come up with what are we going to do about it. In fact, the only thing I see either the WPIAL or the PIAA making progress on is complaining about private schools, as if somehow that's everybody's problem. It's the boogeyman. The Catholic schools are taking all the kids, and that's the Catholic schools have been doing what they do for 50 years, and they're not any better or worse at it than they are right now. They're not the problem. They're not new. It's not any kind of new issue. It's just the boogeyman that everyone can point to, that they're different than us, and so then they have to be what's wrong. It can't be that we've just colossally mismanaged our own product and have boxed it into a corner where it's impossible for some schools to succeed. It's impossible for other schools to be profitable. It's just a mess. It's a mess. They've ruined the wonderful tradition of all the championship games happening at Heinz Field. And yeah, I understand they had some help from the PIAA in messing that up, but they could have gone about fighting for their own tradition a little bit harder, I think. Personally, I don't feel like the Western Pennsylvania schools really used their full political power to do something about the situation. They just kind of went along with everything, and it's a mess, and talking with a couple people from north and District 10, it's not working great there either with the 6 classifications. Clearly, this isn't just a WPIAL problem, but I think given an organization as large, successful, and powerful as the WPIAL has been, it's in a position to do something about it. And I really think they need to. I don't think the product on the field has been up to the standard that league has set. And then we haven't even gotten into, the just talent drain that's happened in the area that's led to there being 4 2019 WPIAL players that have committed to Power 5 schools, with really only a couple more that even have the prospect of doing so. I expect Aliquippa cornerback MJ Devonshire to, and there's maybe 2 or 3 players that also have a chance to commit to a Power 5 school that are still undecided. But, I'd be shocked if it turns out to be more than 6 or 7. And the last few years, it's been 13, 14. If you go back 20 years, 20 wasn't uncommon. So there's clearly something going on that is leading to large level downturn in the quality of the product. But there's only so much the league can do. They can't make there be better athletes, but that should just heighten the importance of doing those other things right, like putting the teams in the right sections to play the teams they want to play, to be in competitive environments and games that they feel like they can win. That's what's going to make people want to go out for the football team. It creates a good environment for the student athletes, for the fans, for the communities. That's what it's all about. That's what high school football in Western Pennsylvania has always been about, and I feel like they've kind of lost sight of that. Changing gears quickly to the Panthers. I wrote on my column today a birthday list for Heather Lyke. It is Heather Lyke's birthday. I'm assuming she's 35. And I wrote up what I would have to get her for her birthday. And, of course, I'm not invited to the party, and so I'm not at the mall right now, hurriedly scrambling for a last-minute birthday gift, as I usually am when I'm attending someone's birthday party. But I just thought, well, what would she really, really like? What could I get her? And, well, the things I came up with, it's not necessarily within the NCAA rules to give to her or the university, but the three things I came up with were for Pat Narduzzi to continue to earn that 7-year contract extension she gave him. The last 2 weeks have been very promising for Pitt football, certainly far more promising than the disaster that was the first 5 weeks of the 2018 season. And that was really kind of the first time that a decision made by Heather Lyke has come under some scrutiny, some criticism here at Pitt. And that, every other hire she's made has turned out so well that extension in 7 years, I think at the time some people kind of scratch their heads. Wow, that seems like a lot, but you just kind of go along with it. But then when it's a 7-year extension followed by a really poor start to the 2018 season, and people start looking around. Well, can't fire this coach. I mean, he just got an extension after a 5-7 season, and he's not going anywhere. This could be a real disaster. Now, seems like a lot of that talk has cooled down after the last 2 weeks, but I'm sure that Heather would really appreciate him continuing to earn that contract extension. And then I said, the big thing probably is for Duke to keep its name out of the headlines when it comes to this NCAA FBI scandal and the ongoing trial. Of course, Zion Williamson, the Duke freshman, was named in testimony that ended up not being submitted into evidence, but was presented as part of this case, where he was asking for money and a job for his stepfather and in a conversation with a Kansas assistant. Now, I don't know if that's ever going to come back to Williamson or what it's going to happen. It certainly doesn't seem like there's anything from that testimony that would point to Jeff Capel's time at Duke, but he was Williamson's primary recruiter. So if something did happen while Duke was recruiting Williamson, the door has been opened wide for the NCAA to dig into that process. And so the less we hear about Duke and Williamson as this trial moves forward, I think the happier Heather Lyke will be. And then finally, I just think that she would really like for that Pitt volleyball team, sitting at 20-0 entering this weekend, to keep rolling along, because she really does care about all 19 of Pitt's varsity sports, and the words comprehensive excellence are something that she has stressed over and over and over again, to the point that I think she kind of gives us a smile when she says it at this point, because we know it's coming. But she means it. It's a big part of what she wants to accomplish at Pitt, and what a better way to celebrate comprehensive excellence than to have a volleyball team number 6 in the nation just tearing through the ACC. And they're supposed to get a good amount of support this weekend. They have their Panthers Unite game tonight, Friday night, and should be some people packing the Fitzgerald Fieldhouse, which should be a lot of fun. And also heighten the need for there to be a new building for Pitt volleyball, which is another one of Heather Lyke's priorities at Pitt. That was my ideas for what to get Heather Lyke for her birthday. Why don't you tell me what you would get her in the comments below, and maybe we'll share some of those on Twitter, or maybe we'll share them next week. As far as the Steelers go, what a weird time for the team to go into its bye week. They just had such a good feeling coming out of that Cincinnati victory last week, where they really came together as a team, overcame some things, and it was really a good victory on the road. I said beforehand it was a game I thought the Steelers could win and should win, and of course they did. But I think the way they won, to come back, minute and a half left, get the ball from Ben Roethlisberger to Antonio Brown and let the team's best two players go ahead and carry them to victory. That's the kind of win that I think you can really carry forward into some momentum. At least go into practice the next week feeling a lot better about yourself than you would have otherwise. And the bye week just kind of sucks the momentum out of that play and that day for the Steelers. And so they're going to have to find a way to build it back up. But you never complain about a bye week in the NFL, especially when you're as banged up as any other team. So I do think it's obviously going to help the Steelers moving forward. But, kind of an interesting timing in that I think this was a week where they probably would have looked to get right back after it after a really exciting victory on the road at Cincinnati. I asked for some reader questions to kind of fill this show because, like I said, we've got very little football to talk about. And the one actually I got that I really liked was, with Pitt and the Steelers both on bye week, are they going to do some maintenance to Heinz Field this week? And I don't believe so, but that's because the turf at Heinz Field has already been replaced twice this season. And, it's something I get a question about all the time, which is why I wanted to kind of dig into this. Why do they insist on playing on a grass field? And how coordinated are the team schedules? There was, I believe, 2 times this year where Pitt and the Steelers played back-to-back days. And now this week, not only are neither of them playing at home, neither of them are playing at all. So Pitt's schedule is done several years in advance. And then the Steelers' schedule is done year to year. But, there's very little overlap between, the availability of the stadium for the two teams. In fact, really the only time when it gets dicey is during baseball season when they have to try to play around with the Pirates' schedule, which is set beforehand. But, there's no coordination there, and neither team really has that much control over their schedule. The NFL sets the Steelers, and for the most part, the ACC sets both the league games and what dates Pitt can schedule a non-conference game for the Panthers. So there's not a lot of coordination there. There's probably not even a lot of communication because the stadium obviously is capable of hosting events on back-to-back days. It's happened many times, and it will continue to happen many times. And to be honest, 1 week between games is not going to do that much for the grass surface, especially with the weather in the 50s like it has been this week. It's not really growing that much. It just, it is what it is. If you tear it up, or you run so many plays on it in such and such a condition, it's going to get beat up. And it has really been hurt this year by how wet it's been. Of course, that makes it a lot easier for the players to tear up the field. But they're going to continue to play on a grass field because studies have shown time and time again that a grass surface is a lot safer for the players than a turf field. There's been an excellent study out this year that showed that Heinz Field had the 3rd fewest injuries per play in the NFL. Now, I don't remember the exact sample size of that, but it was over the last few years, and that's why the teams really want to play on grass. It's because there are fewer injuries for the players. It's a better surface to play on. Any player will tell you they'd rather play on grass than turf, and they're going to continue to do it. And if that involves tearing that field up 2 or 3 times per season, that's what the Steelers and the Panthers are going to do to have the kind of playing surface they want in that stadium. And of course, you're probably going to see it replaced one more time before the end of the Steelers season, as it always is after the WPIAL championship games in November, where they play 4 games on it in one day. And so, that's what's going to happen. It's what's going to continue to happen. At least they're good at it at this point. It's not an unusual process for that grounds crew that worked so hard at Heinz Field to be out there tearing up sod and laying down new sod. Even on a short week, it is not that big of a deal for them. That's all I've got for this week, and we'll be back at the Beaver County Auto Studios next week for our regular looking and sounding show. Thanks for joining me here on my front porch, and I'm going to continue my bye week, and until then, we'll see you next Friday. So thanks, and cheers.